just as the servants of a king bring him anything he demands. You will then have any number of unpaid servants working to obey your beck and call, servants infinitely more capable of producing for you anything you wish than any other power, mechanism, or method on earth. And where are all these willing, unpaid servants? They are within you and all around you right now, even when you think you are absolutely alone. But you don't see them or hear them, much less command them and make them obey you. But they are there, nonetheless, ready to obey you instantly, if you only knew how to control and use them. You acquire that secret knowledge, and its resulting magic, with the secret of spirit thought magic. The well-guarded secret of spirit thought magic. It is obvious that such a fantastic secret would be jealously guarded by those who discovered it. Now, don't confuse spirit thought magic with mystic power. Mystics and great psychics of the past and present, Edgar Cayce, Croisset, Jean Dixon and other notable contemporary examples, possessed mystic power. Different ones could read the past and predict the future with astounding keenness. Or they could detect the perpetrators of well-concealed crimes. Or they could diagnose and prescribe effective remedies and heal strangers they had never seen or heard of. Some wrote bestsellers or painted masterfully, spontaneously. Many prophesied assassinations and other tragedies before these took place. Still others, totally ignorant of the healing arts, operated on the sick without touching them, and the incisions closed instantly and left no scar. In fact, different mystics have done practically everything conceivable with mystic power. For the gainful material world, though, their power was of little use. The moment they tried to make material gains with it, the power deserted them. It was a power for mystic use only. How the well-guarded secret was broken. Frank Rudolph Young's ancestors, however, were convinced that there was a way to make such a power practical and useful enough for the material world. They were certain, furthermore, that there were people in this world who had found the secret of how to make their fortunes easily with it, of how to win romantically anybody they wished, of how to bring anyone under their domination instantly, of how to track down great hidden treasures, of how to pass, brain-cracking, examinations, of how to get promotions which seemed otherwise outside their reach, of how to produce masterpieces of literature or art with ease, and of how to acquire effortlessly anything else they desired for material gain, so long as they did so for worthy purposes. Over 140 years ago, Frank R. Young's ancestors started searching through one continent after another for this power which they felt sure was a well-guarded secret. They wasted many long years in the effort. In Tibet they learned that the lamas bored slight openings in the bones of the foreheads of the initiates to bring them such a power overnight. But, again, the power could be used for mystic purposes only. Finally, in the perilous mountains of Assam, they found one psychic master who knew the well-guarded secret of spirit thought magic, or mystic-like power for material gain. The psychic master, though, refused to reveal the secret because, for the last several thousand years, he told them, it had been handed down by word of mouth to only a few individuals, and most of them had gone right out into the world with it and amassed fabulous wealth at the expense of others, ruined women, made fools of potentates, and used it for other unworthy purposes. The lightning changes that can result in your life by applying spirit thought magic. After Frank Rudolph Young learned this well-guarded secret from his psychic power investigating father, he determined to track it down to its physiological basis, for he found that when applying it, one temporarily filled his body with a mysterious, secret, psychic feeling, which supersensitized his nervous system and his psychic power center to mystic-like control. With his detailed study of the human body through chiropractic, Dr. Young examined the minor physiological changes which were stirred up in the body by the secret. Then he perfected the secret, so that it could bring spirit thought magic to you in still shorter time, and with still greater intensity. The few, like you, to whom he taught the perfected secret, enjoyed unbelievable results. Here are a few typical case histories. 1. A man multiplied the gross income of his failing home, mail-order business by 6 times, practically overnight. 2. A student suddenly saw with the astral light and acquired a learning memory which converted him into a miraculous passer of difficult examinations. 3. A poverty-stricken housewife snatched her husband and 2 children out of the slums. 4. A man, with a simple cartoon, started small and built up a company worth millions. 5. A penniless failure at 40, became a millionaire at 50. 6. A selfish, unprepossessing man, enslaved a beautiful, wealthy, aristocratic girl for 30 years, 3,000 miles away, although she had never seen him. 7. A 32-year-old man arrived in the United States with a few dollars, and years later was worth $8 million. 8. A woman hastened her husband's recovery from a dangerous operation. 9. An anxious husband controlled his flirt-crazy wife without a word or a move. 10. A father suspected the truth of his 15-year-old daughter's explanations for the frequent parties she attended. 11. A man won back his loving wife after losing her from an indirect psychic attack. 12. An 18-year-old freshman girl, who had been expelled and deprived of her scholarship, was suddenly reinstated. 13. A man ended his buying bad luck stocks and made thrilling gains. 14. A 28-year-old divorced waitress, mother of 3, captured Anna married a tall, handsome, vigorous executive earning $40,000 a year, and only 14 years older than she. 15. A desperate woman easily found her important lost legal documents. 16. A man discovered a hidden $15 million gold treasure. 17. A 60-year-old man read the treacherous mind of his most trusted friend, who secretly planned to kill him and marry his much younger wife and sole heir. 18. A man saved, in the water, his own life by a hair from a dangerously speeding motorboat. These are only samples of the amazing true case histories described in this unbelievable book. How much easier your every step in life for every desired accomplishment becomes after you master the secrets it reveals through this book. The author. 1. How Spirit Thought Magic Works for You. Vernon was an average-sized bachelor of 30. He held a simple clerical position, and exercised in a gym several times a week. He was intrinsically lazy, though, and was afraid to marry because he dreaded having to support a wife and family. He wished to work less, in other words, not more. He hated the gym, too, for he considered lifting barbells similar to straining at hard labor. The other members of the gym, Vernon discovered, agreed with him. They slaved at the barbells, they confessed to him, hoping mainly to control their body weights, to keep down their potbellies, and not look old and flabby on the beach or at the pool during vacation time. Vernon yearned to find a magic formula to control his own body weight, but still make his muscles bulge enough, and achieve it all with comparatively little exercise. The younger muscle men in the gym, he observed, tussled for long, hard hours with the barbells, at least every other day, striving desperately to add noticeable muscle girth. They, too, Vernon learned from them, prayed for an easier and less time-consuming method to attain their goals. Practically all of them had tried isometric contractions, but had found their progress with them limited. With the multitude of men all over the world who longed to reach that physical goal, Vernon reflected, what a market existed for a product which could enable them to realize that secret dream with a minimum of toil. What sums would most men shell out eagerly for such a blessing? Vernon racked his brains thinking, but could conceive of no such method. In strict confidence I advised him to acquire the right spirit thought magic to help him. Bursting with eagerness as he was, Vernon took my advice and secretly practiced trying to acquire the right spirit thought magic for fortune-making ideas. He mastered and acquired it in 12 days, a few minutes a day. Shortly afterward he suddenly had a hunch that the unique method he sought could be effected with a pill. The pill, he felt, could absorb the fat off his waist and hips, but at the same time stimulate his muscles to grow at a record pace. He would need to exercise comparatively little, too, but just take the pill regularly. The fourth time he got that hunch, it flashed in his mind how the pill could achieve those ends. It could achieve them by exciting certain steroid hormones of the body. These being anti-fat but pro-protein hormones, they would pair off fat and mushroom his muscle. Vernon had a limited shipment of such pills specially prepared for him and tried them on himself and on some of the gym crowd. It worked. He lost no time inserting a small ad in a magazine. The response was fantastic. Before long, Vernon was advertising widely and orders poured in profusely. Within 5 years he was collecting as much as $600 apiece from large numbers of eager men for special pills, which he sent them over a period of 3 months. Among his customers were noted celebrities. Imitators sprang up everywhere, but the demand for the product outgrew the supply. Vernon's profits, as a result, equaled the annual income of a millionaire. Since I myself don't approve of meddling with the body hormones, I feel that Vernon could have used this incredible power more worthily. How you, too, can suddenly get that one little idea to make you rich quickly. You, too, can attain the fantastic economic gains which Vernon did, with an idea, with one little, but most practical idea, on which you can start with a modest sum and expand fast into the income of a millionaire. The world is full of demanding needs which little ideas can fill, ideas which can be started small, right from your own home, and by yourself. You don't have to depend upon a corporation to buy the idea from you either. And yet, that simple idea might never occur to you naturally. Nevertheless, it is bobbing within you or all around you, just waiting for you to seize it. But you don't know how to seize it. Seize it with the right spirit thought magic for fortune-making ideas. But, be scrupulous, please. Don't promote a product that enriches you fast, but disregards its possible hazards to humanity. The right spirit thought magic for fortune-making ideas will bring you a stupendous money-making idea, if that's all you wish for, and will completely disregard the ethical. But wish for a worthy money-making idea, for it will also bring you such a one. Then you can wallow in wealth happily. How desperate Celia found her much-cherished lost family heirloom. Celia was desperate. The family heirloom had been handed down in her family for generations, and sentimentally it was worth more than money could buy. Suddenly, it was nowhere to be found. It could have been stolen, misplaced, or lying anywhere nearby. Celia drove everyone in the house practically out of his mind with her feverish questioning. Her husband sought my help. In strict confidence I taught him how to teach his wife to acquire the right spirit thought magic for finding lost articles. Since Celia possessed unusual faith in the occult, she acquired that spirit thought magic fast and received a hunch within a week. On that hunch she pursued a certain path outside the house because, without rhyme or reason, her steps seemed to be pulled or urged in that particular direction. After 20 paces or so, her legs experienced, all at once, an urge to stop. Right there, concealed beneath a bush, was the family heirloom. The dog, or Celia's 4-year-old son, had set it there. Celia nearly fainted. How you, too, can find lost articles and other things which have tragically vanished from your life. With the right spirit thought magic, you, too, can find lost articles that mean much to you. The right spirit thought magic knows where the article is, even if you don't. Just acquire it, and it will lead you, urge you, or suggest to your subconscious mind exactly where the vanished article is. On rare occasions it might materialize right before you and tell you, or it might inform you in some other detectable manner. Far more likely, however, it will communicate the secret knowledge to your astral body, and then your astral body will fill your psychic power center, in your forehead and temples, with a strange urge to go where the spirit thought magic leads it. Do not resist that strange urge, no matter if it seems meaningless or illogical to you. Respond to it at once, and with the full conviction that it will lead you to the lost article. How Louise lost her husband to a much younger, attractive woman, but drew him back to her. 45-year-old Louise was aware for some time that her dresses were fitting tightly, that previously undetected lines were carving into her face and neck, and that the drugstore cowboys no longer whistled when she struggled past them with the groceries. But she ignored those changes and resigned herself to growing old gracefully. She noticed, too, on the other hand, that George, her husband, was taking her out less and less, and yet he went out more and more, for business reasons, he told her. Then Louise discovered the brutal truth. George was keeping company with a much younger woman, a physically attractive divorcee 19 years younger than she. Louise thought she had stepped off the end of the world. She deplored regular exercise, dieting and all the other ways of reducing her waist and hips. She would probably look older then, too, with her face abnormally thin from loss of underlying fat. Oh, God, what could she do? A friend of hers approached me with her problem, as above, and I suggested to her friend that she try to acquire the right spirit thought magic to capture and rule the person she wanted romantically. Her friend brought her to see me. Louise was distraught and bordered on hysteria. The life she had built up so contentedly was now tumbling down on her. Never had she suspected that George would ever care if she lost some of her looks. She herself didn't care. He didn't look so glamorous either, with his bald head, double chin and potbelly. But, he was her husband. No one could look young and romantic forever. I managed to pacify her momentarily. But I sternly advised her not to use the right spirit thought magic for capturing and ruling the person she wanted romantically, in order to bring George back to her like a virtual slave. I advised her, instead, to fill him with a yearning to return to her for herself, that is, to bring him back to her because she was the one he loved, and undoubtedly still loved. She should convince him astrally, in other words, that he had just been temporarily infatuated with another woman. Louise listened carefully to my instructions for acquiring the right spirit thought magic to capture and rule the person she wanted romantically, which I taught her in strict confidence. She acquired that magic in about 12 days. With it, however, despite my pleas to the contrary, she took merciless possession of George and brought him back to her like an enslaved zombie. George, as a result, lost his own personality and turned into putty in her hands. He now made wrong decisions at work because he let Louise dictate his every move. As a consequence, he not only lost his best chance of promotion, but was demoted. That converted him into a big babbling baby. But vindictive Louise would not relent even then. Just so long as she still had him on a leash, she admitted to me, she was satisfied. When last heard of, George was still practically eating out of Louise's hand. He was allowing her to take his wages from him, to spend them as she wished and turn him into a downtrodden stray dog of a man. Louise had used the right spirit thought magic for capturing and ruling the person she wanted romantically, for unworthy purposes, just as the psychic master in the mountains of Assam had warned my ancestors that most people would. How you can attach a drifting mate to you permanently. With the right spirit thought magic, you, too, can enslave a drifting mate and attach him, or her, to you permanently. Just don't be greedy about it, as Louise was. But this power can save your home for you, even without your regaining your lost youth or figure. The right spirit thought magic will seize such an unshakable control over your drifting mate that it will invade his every pore and blind him to anything unattractive about you. At the same time, it will accentuate the attractive features about you, to such a degree that your transformed mate will see only wonders in you. In fact, he will even adore your unattractive traits by perceiving them in an odd romantic manner, and enslave himself still more to them. But, to repeat, you may be powerfully tempted to abuse the right spirit thought magic for capturing and ruling the person you want romantically. If you use it for worthy purposes, on the other hand, you will be as irresistible romantically at 90 as you were at 19. If you cannot control the insatiable impulse to abuse it and depersonalize your drifting mate and convert him, or her, into a helpless puppet at your beck and call, however, the power of spirit thought magic may not be made available to you. Make it a point to use worthily all its powers, right now, or stop learning how to acquire it, at once. 2. The physiological revealing secret of spirit thought magic. From the beginning of time, man has used mystic power to overcome the most formidable obstacles. With the rise of science and the consequent universal contempt for the occult, man grew to believe that spirit thought magic is non-existent and can therefore be of no value to him. In order to accept that conclusion, however, man had to shut his eyes purposely to the fantastic powers periodically demonstrated by individuals who lacked outstanding mental gifts or formal education. When these individuals performed feats in mathematics and medical diagnoses, prophesied the future, displayed unbelievable financial acumen, showed astonishing knowledge of ancient times and languages, found hopelessly lost articles, revealed incredible artistic genius, physical power and character fascination, or performed miracles of surgery and healing. Indeed, such individuals achieved feats, in almost everything, which outclassed those of the best trained or best gifted minds. Carefully conducted tests, too, have failed to expose a tremendous number of them as frauds. Most remarkable is that the overwhelming number of those ungifted individuals did not inherit mystic power. On the contrary, each acquired it nearly always after suffering a significant enough mental or physical trauma. Such a discovery proved undoubtedly that everyone possesses mystic power, but that not everyone has suffered a significant enough mental or physical trauma to trigger it into regular use. The accidental trauma which the ungifted individual suffered, provided the shock which started this latent power in him functioning regularly. Here are some typical case histories of such people. How many everyday people were suddenly gifted with mystic power after suffering unexpected traumas? The list of names of different everyday people who did not stand out from the crowd, but who were suddenly gifted with mystic power shortly after suffering significant enough mental or physical traumas, continues to grow fast. Here is a sample list of well-documented cases. Their names have been omitted or changed. A retarded girl who had suffered head damage when delivered by a cesarean operation, read foreign languages fluently, although nobody knew whether she understood them or not. Following a severe illness, Ted Seriozes, his right name, discovered that he possessed the unique power to produce photographs and scenes that were hundreds or thousands of miles away, in places he had never been to, seen or heard about. An individual fell into a profound sleep, a trance-like condition, and awoke changed into an altogether different personality. Shocked by the bereavement of a dear, close one, Wilma acquired thereafter the power of automatic writing and received accurate prophecies regularly from spirits. Her ability as a seer, besides, increased with age. Mrs. Lund found her psychic powers greatly amplified following a spinal injury. Elva had been normal and healthy. She was suddenly taken ill and told that her death was near. The shock left her in total despair for a month. Then, one night, she beheld a vision of herself, or her own astral body, and it talked to her and assured her that she would not die for years. 6 days later, Elva was discharged from the hospital, cured like a miracle, her doctors said. Since then she has made immortal predictions. She predicted the election of John F. Kennedy, the Watts riots, Churchill's death, the crash of a giant airliner, the publishing and unusual success of a totally unknown author who had written for 30 years without one word being accepted for publication, and much else. Cynthia had been a normal child and was maturing into an attractive woman. Then she was stricken with meningitis. She spent 6 days in a grave crisis, and no hope was held for her recovery. She suddenly prophesied a tragedy awaiting her nurse. That very night Cynthia passed her crisis and started recovering. 5 days later, the nurse died in an accident, as Cynthia had accurately prophesied. Cynthia recovered, but was crippled and had to learn to walk with crutches. But she had acquired, and retained, the power to foretell the future. A hypnotist had been hypnotizing a girl in an effort to rid her of her repeated headaches. One day, during the treatment, she suddenly sank into a trance so deep that her breathing became laborious, and her pulse rate dropped alarmingly. All at once her voice changed into that of a soldier who had perished in battle 100 years before. A priest had been praying one morning, as usual. Suddenly he felt faint and lost consciousness. When he awoke, his hands and feet were pierced and bleeding, and so was a wound in his side several inches deep. These wounds bled with him for the rest of his life. A widowed housewife in her early 40s, and mother of 2 children, broke several ribs in a fall and was confined to her home for several months. Soon after, she was contacted by the spirits of the old masters Liszt, Bach, Chopin, Debussy, Schubert and Beethoven and has composed more than 400 incredible pieces under their dictation. Poltergeist disturbances are always found to be particularly active in the vicinity of a child or young woman who is an epileptic or an hysteric. A young girl who had been mentally deficient since the age of 5 after being hit by a car, plunged from a third-floor window at the age of 26 in a suicide attempt. The head blow she suffered changed her from a retarded idiot with the intelligence of an 8-year-old to a genius with one of the highest IQs. She may be the smartest person alive today, claims a noted physician who tested her. Einstein could have competed with her, and her intelligence is still growing. Christoph Friedrich wrote that during a violent perturbation of mind, owing to a series of incidents which had altogether wounded his moral feelings, and from which he saw no avenues of relief, he suddenly noticed, 10 paces from him, the figure of a deceased person. Although that same figure did not reappear, he perceived since then, very distinctly, the figures of many more deceased persons whom he did not know. The apparition ceased abruptly when he lost a quantity of blood in an emergency. Mystic powers have also come to different people following certain distempers, such as a terrible headache. The list of similar cases grows steadily, now that people are less ashamed to come out and confess them. You will now have revealed and explained to you the different physiological and pathological changes which take place in the body as a result of such mental and physical traumas, and how these may trigger different mystic powers. How trauma to the head may trigger mystic power. Trauma to the head has been followed later by the sudden acquisition of mystic power. Trauma to the head should be avoided, of course, for even if it is not followed sooner or later by grave complications, it is fraught with serious consequences. One who receives a fracture of the skull which gives rise to no organic signs, or one who, consequent to a blow to the head, is left unconscious for a long time, is apt to suffer, for months or years, from severe headaches, dizziness, irritability, lack of power of concentration, inability to work, or from impaired memory. Even aside from those neurotic manifestations, the person who receives a serious blow to the head is not the same individual he was before the accident. Convulsions may follow later, too, even when no injury to the brain can be demonstrated. These may manifest themselves from 6 months to 2 years or longer after the accident, particularly if a scar forms in the brain tissue. The younger the individual, the graver the possibilities. Even following some trifling accident which may, or may not, have been succeeded by temporary loss of consciousness, many victims develop a train of symptoms which are generally called traumatic neurosis. These symptoms usually set in after a few days or weeks, or occasionally, sometimes after months. During that time the individual is seemingly well and displays no signs of organic involvement of his nervous system. Such syndromes generally follow industrial accidents, or during war. They may also occur in persons who have merely been shocked in railroad accidents or explosions without receiving any evident injury. Most commonly, though, they follow blows to the head. Some observers insist that all these traumas, which are similar to traumas causing concussion of the brain, lead to minute changes in the nervous system. Hence, they call the resulting condition traumatic encephalitis or encephalopathy. Many such cases do not yield to treatment and persist after all obvious causes have been removed. After considering all these different, even if minute, changes which result in the brain following trauma to it, even from a trifling accident, or even following the emotional trauma of shock without physical contact, as well as the fact that such a highly respected medical authority as Meakins asserts that the person who receives a serious blow to the head is never the same person he was before the accident, it is not difficult to realize that a significant change has taken place in the victim's brain which, even if not demonstrable by diagnosis, nevertheless may trigger his latent mystic power. How trauma to the spinal cord may trigger mystic power. Trauma to the spinal cord has been followed later by the sudden acquisition of mystic power. As with any other kind of trauma, trauma to the spinal cord should be avoided, of course. The clinical signs of injury to the spine and the spinal cord usually appear suddenly, or at least very rapidly, because most of the damage to it results at the time of the injury. Even dislocation of the spine may cause severe and fatal injury to the spinal cord. Or, the spinal cord may sustain no damage at all. Or, again, the damage to it by a self-reduced dislocation may be severe, even to the extent of cutting the spinal cord. The symptoms of the resulting spinal shock are the same symptoms that apply to any general shock. These are prostration, pallor, cold sweat, erratic pulse, pinched face, sunken eyes, cold limbs, but fairly clear mind, nevertheless. Hemorrhage into the spinal cord may also frequently result from trauma. The great number of capillaries in the central gray matter of the spinal cord, which is composed of nerve cells, predisposes it to hemorrhage. The hemorrhage may follow a direct blow to the spine, even though the hemorrhage is then sometimes delayed, or it may follow abrupt bending or severe straining. The hemorrhage has even occurred to women following difficult labor and rarely, in the newborn during breech extraction. That might account for some people being born with functioning mystic power. If the patient does not succumb after the injury to his spinal cord, all the symptoms gradually recede. But if the residual signs do not disappear within a few months, they are apt to remain permanently. Mystic power may appear in such cases, even if the remaining sign is just a scar. How trauma to the central nervous system may trigger mystic power. Trauma to the central nervous system has been followed later by the sudden acquisition of mystic power. The trauma may occur through cancerous or other growths, such as scars, in the spinal canal, which press against the spinal cord within it, because there is little room for much displacement of the spinal cord in the spinal canal. The wall of this canal, besides, is composed of bone and fibrous tissue, and therefore cannot stretch or expand. Neither does the protective sheath around the spinal cord stretch. The spinal cord itself, in addition, is held more or less in place in the canal by ligaments on each side of it. An expanding growth within the sheath covering the spinal cord, the central nervous system, therefore, will compress the spinal cord directly because the sheath presses the expanding growth into the cord. As the expansion of the growth continues, the substance of the spinal cord is destroyed. How trauma to the brain may trigger mystic power. Trauma to the brain has been followed later by the sudden acquisition of mystic power. As a result of the trauma, the injured part of the brain stimulates superreactive and paralytic reactions in the body. These, in turn, trigger spontaneous messages from the body to the brain, or spontaneous commands from the brain to the muscles. This triggering is explained by the release phenomena of Jackson, which means that when the conscious mind, which is a higher nerve center, is removed or destroyed and can no longer restrain or inhibit the thalamus and the other lower nerve centers, these go wild and overstimulate the structures they rule. These structures are your senses of temperature, your senses of cold, heat, sight, hearing, pressure, your muscles, your circulation, your breathing and your metabolism. This spontaneous overstimulation of those different organs and structures of your body may bring your senses into contact with the astral currents and trigger mystic power. How trauma to the body may trigger mystic power. Trauma to the body will fatigue it and thereby leave it less resistant to the invisible influences of the astral world. How emotional traumas may trigger mystic power. Emotional traumas, like the great terror or horror that result during war or in perilous experiences, as well as long-standing psychological maladjustments, may trigger mystic power. The shock of the emotional trauma supersensitized the brain and nervous system of the victim to parallel experiences of other people and brings him a superhuman, astral, rapport with all phases of it. Many early psychics displayed choleric and nervous traits. Some, as children, tended to feel different and misunderstood, to feel insecure, as adults to talk too much and over-apologetically to strangers, but harshly to those close to them, to seem regularly as if playing a role, to recognize themselves in others, to be plagued with stomach trouble, to specialize in odd fields which were of interest primarily to themselves, and thus separated themselves still more from normal society. The vividness and accuracy of their psychic perceptions varied considerably, also, with their changing states of mind. It was usually far clearer and specific when they were deeply emotionally involved in the experience themselves. Croisset, for example, envisioned drowned children easily because of his own narrow escapes from drowning when a child, and he could locate their submerged bodies readily. Another gifted seer clearly and specifically envisioned the locations of the vanished bodies of real and potential suicides because he often contemplated taking his own life. The subconscious mind, to draw up a rule, also directly affects the intensity of the individual's mystic power. Many paragnosts, also, perceived best when the matter was related to their inborn, as well as to their acquired personality traits. If the psychic was artistically inclined, for instance, he perceived best matters pertaining to art. The telepathic vibrations which emanate from persons engaged in parallel experiences seem to be similar in astral wavelength and are thereby readily picked up by the psychic power center of the mystic or psychic who is attuned to such vibrations due to his own past similar experiences. Tremendous emotional traumas may release this same power in the average person and bring him mystic power. The sacred disease, which may trigger mystic power. Epilepsy, fits, was formerly called the sacred disease, because it commonly afflicted prophets, mystics and other holy men. Even Moses was well known for his fits. After coming out of his fits, the prophet usually made the revelations he had heard from the voice during his period of unconsciousness. Since epilepsy is a form of psychic trauma to the brain, there is little doubt that it also temporarily brings about certain changes in the brain which trigger the mystic power of those prophets, mystics and other holy men. This can be readily believed when it is realized that, although epilepsy may be due to heredity, it may also be due to head trauma, although this is not an important cause of it. It may also be due to birth trauma, or to trauma sustained during birth, for many apparently normal children are found with blood in their spinal fluid at birth. Epilepsy may also be caused by disease toxins. Measles, for example, frequently leaves a clinical encephalitis, or a low-grade encephalitis which is not observed clinically, but which may leave residual damage that may later cause epilepsy. Blood circulation instability, which, for instance, is found in the hypersensitive, the emotionally unstable, the high-strung, the stammerer and stutterer and others with easily excitable natures, may repeatedly, during common everyday experiences, deprive the person's tissue of the necessary amount of blood, and therefore of oxygen, it needs. That traumatizes it and causes it to send out abnormally powerful commands to his muscles to contract, and thus bring on his convulsive seizures. Practically all mystics, and mediums, are high-strung, emotionally unstable people, and some of the greatest of them, as a consequence, stammer and stutter severely. Moses is a celebrated case in point. An authority claims that epileptic and other convulsive seizures are set off by a trigger mechanism composed of a bundle of short nerve fibers running between the frontal cortex, the psychic power center, and the thalamus, the center of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. How the sacred disease may trigger mystic power. There is little doubt, then, that a mystifying connection exists between epilepsy and mystic power. This mystifying connection will now be traced. Epilepsy is medically defined as a disorder characterized by sudden, transient alterations of brain action, usually with symptoms of a muscular, motor, sensitivity, sensory, or psychic, psychological, nature, and it is frequently accompanied by alterations in the consciousness. It causes pronounced brainwave alterations in the electroencephalogram. With the development of more precise diagnosis tests and instruments, the inherited type of epilepsy has been found to be the result of abnormally active brain tissue caused by injury, infection, or unknown agents. Metabolic disorders, such as uremia, retention of urine, and therefore too much water in the bloodstream, hypoglycemia, or too little sugar in the blood, and consequently not enough acid in it, hypocalcemia, too little calcium in the blood and, therefore, also, too little acid in it, since calcium is the acid ion, may give rise to convulsive seizures. That is why the true mystic is invariably a vegetarian, for that diet keeps his blood as normally alkaline as possible. Also, it prolongs the length of his mystic power periods because it retards the rate of accumulation of toxins in his body which add acid to his blood during his trance and bring him back to the physical plane. By alkalizing his blood as much as possible within normal limits, indeed, the true mystic becomes so acutely susceptible to astral contact that common everyday phenomena, like light, sound or touch, can precipitate his trances, just as they can precipitate the epileptic seizure. As with certain epileptics, the mystic is also predisposed to astral seizures during sleep. None of these tendencies are revealed under the microscope. That explains why it is difficult to prove mystic powers to the skeptic. Like epilepsy, mystic power is a syndrome rather than a specific, disease entity. For that reason, like epilepsy, no specific pathological tissue alterations could be found in the tissues of the mystic if examined under the microscope. In fact, even patients who have suffered for years from epileptic convulsions demonstrate no pathological changes in their brains. Practically any part of the brain, besides, can initiate a convulsive seizure. That is why, practically any part of it can bring mystic power. But each part will bring a different mystic power because each part of the brain, as demonstrated with epilepsy, possesses its own distinct rhythm of vibration, as shown in the electroencephalograph. As a consequence, the epileptic symptoms depend on the function of the brain area involved, as well as on the rapidity of the rhythm and amplitude of the waves of its vibrations. The rhythm and amplitude of the waves, furthermore, are influenced, as with fits, by the amount of oxygen and sugar in the blood. Deep breathing, or overoxygenation of the blood, increases the rhythm and occurrence of the epileptic attacks, because it increases the alkaline state of the body. The sacred disease, then, apparently triggers mystic power in the mystics by bringing about a temporary alkalosis in the brain. The mysterious significance of the tigroid bodies of mystic power. There is one histological clue, however, which always follows all the possible causes described which may trigger mystic power in the mystic. This clue appears immediately after an unexpected trauma either to the head, to the spinal cord, to the central nervous system, to the brain, to the emotions, and even from the trauma of the sacred disease. This previously unsuspected clue is the destriping of the tigroid bodies, also known as the Nissl substance, of the nerve cell. The tigroid bodies of the nerve cells are flake-like granules of varying size and of irregular shape. Although their quantity within the different nerve cells varies considerably, their amount in each cell is greatly diminished by fatigue and aftershock. The tigroid bodies of the nerve cells are ribose-type nucleoproteins, with significant amounts of calcium, iron, and perhaps other minerals. They are also found in brain tissue deprived of adrenaline. In other words, in the alkaline brain. They lend a striped or tigroid appearance to the nerve and undergo disintegration, destriping, in a fatigued or injured nerve cell. When the nerve cell is injured by any kind of trauma, therefore, including psychic trauma, it undergoes fatigue, and its tigroid bodies are destriped and disappear. They reappear when the nerve cell recovers from the fatigue, or after the temporary injury. This is the undisputable physiological clue of mystic powers. The tigroid bodies of the nerve cells are destriped by them. The process of mystic power in a nutshell. Now, let's compress the whole process of mystic power into a nutshell. Mystic powers are triggered and the tigroid bodies of the nerve cells are destriped. The destriping occurs when the physical body is fatigued or overalkalized from any cause. The mystic lamas puncture the foreheads of the initiates just enough to achieve the semblance of epilepsy, and hence, for the initiates to acquire mystic powers. Similar effects, though, can be brought about temporarily and maintained within a normal physiological range by overoxygenating the blood. The well-concealed psychic masters of old developed it much further with the well-guarded secret of spirit thought magic. My determined ancestors searched for this secret all over the Far East for over 100 years and finally drew it, piece by piece, from the one remaining psychic master in the perilous mountains of Assam, who knew it. I myself spent the next 40 years perfecting and improving it scientifically for each different spirit thought magic. You are now about to learn this well-guarded secret, so that you can use it to make your every dream come true with the least effort imaginable. 3. How to acquire the secret power of spirit thought magic. Powerful thoughts, astral and spirit impressions and natural forces of every conceivable type and variety are constantly bombarding your mind and body, both from within and from without. These range from the molecules of different and altering physiological substances flowing through your blood and your tissue fluids, to the psychic and spirit communications from the far-reaching other world. You just don't see or hear them, no more than you see or hear the fish when you are swimming in the ocean. But these thoughts are forces, like the fish. They are there constantly flashing all around you, just as the fish in the deep ocean are moving all around you. Means of communication. Sometimes these thoughts and forces communicate to you by means of a direct apparition which may, or may not speak to you. At other times they do so through a hunch, a strange feeling, or sense, through your sixth sense, through orlums, automatic writing, through a crystal ball, hypnosis, trances and seances. But you misconstrue those messages or commands as your own thoughts and don't